Brian's ankle has you tell me, what hardware do we have in the ankle? Plate, screws?
2 screws.
And no plate?
No plate.
Okay, so 2 screws and no plate from a broken ankle that he had how long ago?
2 years.
2 years ago, okay? So an ankle with 2 screws in it from 2 years ago that he broke, then he lacks inversion of the ankle. So for this video, we're gonna be going over the length loading progression in an effort to train the tissue-specific needs that his ankle needs based on his surgery and the hardware that's in there. So for him, we know ankle inversion is his biggest deficit. When he goes into inversion of the ankle, his range-limiting tissue is the outer portion. That would be the progressive tissue that we talk about. Basically, all we are going to start doing is passive stretching in an effort to open up that passive range so that we can do isometrics from there and translate it into usable active range of motion. On a scale of 1 to 10, Brian, how much of a stretch are you getting for passive stretching?
About 6.
6, okay. So when we're looking at the range limiting tissue for your ankle, and anyone who's watching the video, if you lack inversion from an inversion related injury, we need to be passive stretching the open side of the joint without any pain. Do you have any pain right now, or do you have like a healthy stretch stimulus going on?
Healthy stretch.
Healthy stretch, okay. So we're gonna hold that for 2 minutes. I have them on a timer right now. So for inversion of the ankle, we're looking for the open side of the stretch with no pinching. If you have hardware like Brian in the ankle, we need to manage expectations in that we might not achieve the deepest possible stretch, so you're working with whatever the tissue is able to work with. So if we're looking at getting a deeper stretch for people watching the video and for your sake, think if we can tilt this a little bit more, and sometimes shifting body weight forward or to the side can help initiate a different stretch. And if I'm pulling you over towards me and it's not getting a bigger stretch, go back the other direction. But for people watching the video, you may need to tinker with it. Just putting yourself in this position does not guarantee you're gonna get a deep stretch. Go ahead and begin your PAIL. So what I want you to do is lock this down, and nothing else is moving. I don't want to see any surrounding joints compensating. And so you're trying to tilt your ankle towards me, kind of pulling the outside of the ankle up. Are you able to get a contraction there?
Yeah.
You're able to find your PAIL. Yeah. Would you say it's gotten easier since we first shown it to you?
I would say so for sure.
It seems like it. You already found it. Well, I remember when we first started doing this, you couldn't find your PAIL at all. And so that's an important teaching point for those watching the video, is that if you have trauma to a joint, and there's hardware, especially surgery, anything like that, the responsiveness of that tissue is something that needs to be considered. When we first started doing ankle inversion isometrics with Brian here, he had a very hard time finding the correct tissue that needs to be lengthened. And it's because his system, the neurology of the tissue there, simply is turned off in an effort to protect it. And it's on him to produce high quality stimulus over the course of several days, weeks, months, years, in an effort to kind of like bring it back to life and promote the function of it so that we have range of motion and strength. Can you rail and do the opposite? So think about tilting your ankle deeper into inversion, and you're almost trying to pull the inside of your foot up. Now, are you getting a stretch bigger on the outside, or are you able to contract the inside of the ankle?
So I definitely feel a stretch on the outside.
Okay.
And I faintly feel
the squeeze on the inside.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that is a good example. Brian is trying to rail and get his ankle deeper into inversion to contract the regressive tissue here. In this position and in this circumstance, his range limiting tissue is this outer ankle. You cannot contract this that well because this is restricted. And so your job is to turn this on as much as you can by first opening this up, right? So you say you feel this faintly, but you feel the range limiting tissue more, right? The length inside.
Like this would be like 8 out of 10, the ankle probably 3 out of 10.
Like the inside's 3 out of 10.
Right.
Okay, and so yeah, so your range limiting tissues make it so you can't contract. If you're in that position and it's an uphill battle, it doesn't like respond right away, you need to see if you can deliberately connect with your foot and your ankle and turn this on with more tension. So think more inversion. Can you contract that tissue to pull your ankle deeper into it?
I feel like it's just like
a squeeze, tension. Okay. It should not feel like a passive stretch. It should feel like something that's like actively being done. So part of the length loading progression is we opened up inversion first in an effort to to release his range limiting tissue, which would be the outer progressive tissue of inversion, so that we can shorten regressive tissue. Because he lacks inversion, he's also by definition gonna lack rotation the other direction, so he's not gonna be able to evert. So for eversion, we're using a slant board, and we're gonna do the same thing. End range isometrics in an effort to open up capsule space within his ankle, but he experiences some pinching and eversion, so we're gonna navigate that based on the restrictions that his ankle has based on its history. So let's get you into the eversion stretch, and the entire time we're looking for open side stretching, just like when we did inversion, we were looking for stretching on the outer side of his other ankle. We're looking for a stretch on the inner side. So this is literally the complete opposite we just did with inversion. For you right now, Brian, are you getting open side stretching or closing side restriction?
Getting open side, but I'm also getting closing side as well.
Okay, what's the ratio, open to closing? Let's talk about that.
60-40 open.
Okay, if I asked you to take a couple really big deep breaths and focus on full range of motion breathing, so like a full inhale till you can't get any more air, and then a full exhale, are you able to release the pinch? And that's something that not everyone can do, but it's worth trying. I mean, it's a tool in our toolbox. And so if that's something that a lot of people don't really give any thought to, they just kind of feel it and then they're tensing up because it's like kind of pinchy. And if we're navigating an impingement in the ankle, that we have to relax the nervous system so that it's not like guarding, right? Guarding is a very real thing. Pinching can be part of guarding, especially with neurological restriction. So are you able to get the ratio from the pinch to die down? And if not, then we can talk about it from there.
It died down, but I still feel a little bit.
Something that might help is the hips actually stacking over to the left more instead of just forward. Does that give you more pinching on the outside?
I would say there's not much pinching, but I don't feel as deep of a stretch on the
Okay,
open side.
let's go ahead and start a PAIL. So if you locked everything down here and I told you to tilt your ankle the other direction where you're pulling the inside of the ankle up, are you able to contract this?
Yep.
So you feel stretched tissue now squeezing.
Yep.
Okay, so you have a productive PAIL here with no pinching. But what we're gonna do is an inversion loaded ankle car. And so you struggle to squeeze this tissue, right? Because the range limiting tissue is the outside. Like you have a very hard time doing this because this is so restricted, so you can't contract the inside of your ankle. But if you're in this position, gravity's going down. So going up is difficult. So what I'm gonna do is put an ankle weight on your foot. And you are gonna do a loaded ankle car with inversion bias.
Cam, could you do this with a band?
Could do it with a band too. You could have a band, like under your foot and strap it up, and it would pull down and it would pull up. So what I want you thinking is, yeah, right there. Go ahead and go through the ankle car sequence. This, as long as you're comfortable here, manage it. But while you're in this position, you have to contract this tissue against gravity, right? Gravity's pulling down, the ankle weight's pulling down, and now you're loading it. So go ahead and come down. Now you're able to train this to length, right? Because the ankle is being pulled into eversion, plantar flex, and then invert. And so it's the exact same sequence that we did on the yoga block, but instead of gravity pulling me down here in the plantar flexion like I would in this setup, you're being pulled into inversion. And that's a little bit more specific to your struggles, which is shortening this tissue and lengthening it.